Elizabeth Piest arrived to pick up her 15-year-old son, Robert, who had just finished his shift. He asked if she minded hanging on just a couple minutes while he spoke to a man about a possible job.
Oh, right.
But Adam, 2 minutes turned into 10 minutes, which turned into 30 minutes. And when Elizabeth eventually went to see what the holdup was, Robert was nowhere to be found. Robert had actually become the final victim of John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown.
Oh, is he one of the biggest serial killers in America?
He managed to kill more than 30 men and boys and then burying them under his house, which he shared with his wife and 2 stepdaughters.
What?
What I thought I knew about John Wayne Gacy is actually very wrong, because he was not going around killing people dressed as a clown. And the reality was far more terrifying in that he preyed on his victims under the guise of actually a very well-respected member of the community. And I think that makes us more terrifying.
I think it does. This isn't someone that's lurking in the dark. You just think, God, who else is out there?
Welcome to The Compendium, an assembly of fascinating things, a weekly variety podcast that gives you just enough information to stand your ground at any social gathering.
We explore stories from the darker corners of true crime, their hidden gems of history, and the jaw-dropping deeds of extraordinary people.
I am Kyle Risi, your ringmaster for this week's episode.
And I'm Adam Cox, the lion hairdresser for this week. I make sure those lions have really good styled manes before they go out on set.
Bouffons.
I give them a good old blowout.
Yeah, that's it. Blowouts always make you look really great. What is it? Always makes you look really fresh.
Yeah.
It's fresh. That's the word.
Fresh out from the wind.
Yeah. Standing on Lion's Peak or whatever you call it, like the wind been blowing, been looking over your kingdom.
Yeah, and then sometimes I set curlers in the day before. So
Yeah.
I put them all to bed with the curlers in and give them a chicken to eat.
It's not very inclusive because really you can only satisfy the male clients. The females are like, not really much to work with. How the dynamics have flipped, huh?
The story of my life.
Yeah. The best we can do, ma'am, is put a bow on it. But I'm a girl and that's a blue bow. That's all we got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who cares about them? It's all about the lion mane.
It is, it's true. It's about the men. Guys, if you are new to the show and you want to support us, and the absolute best way to support the show and enjoy all of our exclusive perks is, of course, to pop over to Patreon and sign up, because it's free and you'll get access to next week's episode an entire 7 days before anyone else.
And for as little as $5 a month, you can become a fellow freak of the show, which will unlock our entire back catalogue of our secret episodes.
Secret, top secret, that no one gets to listen to apart from you. And I wouldn't even recommend you listen to it.
Just skip that.
Yeah, actually, should we take that bit out? But Adam, of course, as we always say every week, the real reason to sign up as a certified freak or a big top tier member is that you get exclusive, one-of-a-kind access to our compendium keychain. People call it the crotch dangler.
Yeah, you just sent out a fresh batch of crotch danglers. And so just think, if we're really quiet.
I can hear them jingling. They say that when 2 compendium freaks get together, you can actually hear their crotch danglers clang together as they connect.
Beautiful.
Yeah. The jangle is the equivalent of giving 2 twins, like when you're like, oh, God, we're pregnant, and it's twins, like, oh, God, let's get rid of him. And then you like, what we'll do is we'll give each of them half a medallion, send them off, and then one day they'll come back together and join the medallions together. It's the same thing, but with the jangle of the keychain.
Yeah.
So you know, come back together, you come home. By the way, when I was sending out the batch of crotch danglers, one of the addresses that I noticed was from a woman from Wishaw, where my mum and my sister live.
Oh.
She's literally a 4-minute walk away from my sister's house.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just going to say her name. Caitlin, hi. Hi, Caitlin. I'm so excited. I'm wondering if maybe this is the work of my sister, and she's like, you should listen to my brother's podcast. And maybe they know each other.
Doing promo for you.
Maybe. But anyway, we have someone in Wishaw where my parents live. It's great. Anyway, I think we've digressed.
And so lastly, guys, please follow us on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review because your support helps others find us and keeps these amazing stories coming. So they're always in your feed.
Always. Yeah. I think the most important bit there is just follow us, please.
Yeah.
So on a Tuesday when the new episode arrives, you get a notification. That's all we care about.
Only 20% of our listeners actually follow us. Isn't it something like that?
Yeah, 7 people.
Let's get that up to 10.
Yay, 10! Adam, that is enough of the housekeeping. Because today on the Compendium, we're diving into an assembly of myth versus reality, where the most famous version of the story is not actually the most terrifying one.
So it's the other version?
The reality.
Ah.
Adam, at 9 p.m. on the 11th of December 1978, Elizabeth Piest arrived at the Nissan pharmacy in Des Plaines, just outside Chicago. She was there to pick up her 15-year-old son, Robert, who had just finished his shift. As Robert came outside to Elizabeth, he asked if she minded hanging on just a couple minutes while he spoke to a man about a possible job, one that apparently paid double than what he was earning at the moment, $5. So he was earning $2.50. It's crazy. This is 1978.
Is that kind of like average for back then?
I guess so, but he was like $5, Mum. That's wild. I've got to do this. But even though this was a great opportunity, Elizabeth was actually celebrating her 46th birthday that day, and she wanted to get home to start the celebrations. But in the end, it is $5. $5 is $5, right? Just like our keychain. So she reluctantly agreed, especially since he said he was only going to be 2 minutes. But Adam, 2 minutes turned into 10 minutes, which turned into 30 minutes. And when Elizabeth eventually went to see what the holdup was, Robert was actually nowhere to be found. And it just didn't make sense to her. If Robert had left the premises, surely she would have seen him leave. Like, she was only in the car park, right? Eventually, Elizabeth, she cut her losses. She went home looking forward to telling Robert off for just leaving her in the lurch in the car park, right? On her 46th birthday, that's mean. But when she got home, the only people in the house were her husband Ken and her daughter Kerry, both equally annoyed that she was now also late for her birthday party. She, of course, explained what had happened, and from there, the family set out to try and find Robert. But Adam, by 11:30 p.m., when Robert still hadn't turned up, Elizabeth and Ken drove to the Des Plaines Police Department to report Robert missing. What Elizabeth didn't know was that Robert had actually become the final victim of who the world has come to know now as John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown.
Oh, yeah, I have heard about this guy. Isn't he one of the biggest serial killers in America?
Yeah, like at the time when he went on trial, this is the most people anyone had been convicted of killing.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy at the time. And it wasn't even that long ago. It was only 1980. So, I mean, I'm sure that record has been broken, especially by the likes of Harold Shipman, who's killed upwards of 280 people. But in America at the time, that was like crazy.
So how many? Or can you reveal yet?
I can. 33 people.
Wow.
Yeah. But what do you actually know about the story?
Well, aside from him being a clown, because he's called the Killer Clown, right? And isn't that where American Horror Story Season 4 of Freak Show always turns up in these episodes?
Yeah.
Is that where the Killer Clown was inspired from, him in real life?
Yeah, Twisty, his name was. Twisty the Clown.
Real life or in the show?
Oh, in the show,
Okay.
yes. So yeah, and he was kidnapping kids, and that was directly inspired by the story of John Wayne Gacy.
Wow.
But I also didn't really know too much about John Wayne Gacy until this week, if I'm honest. And Adam, I have to tell you, this is a really disturbing story.
Oh, no.
But what is interesting is what I thought I knew about John Wayne Gacy and his crimes is actually very wrong, because his image has sort of been flattened down into this image of this notorious killer clown, right? This is what you knew, right? You know very little about the story, but yet that's the thing that stood out. And you can totally see why. Like, the notion of a clown going around killing kids is a terrifying one. Clowns are meant to be these fun, safe, ridiculous personalities, especially around children. So the image of one murdering people is horrifying. And so this is the angle that led much of the reporting around the story of John Wayne Gacy when it first erupted. But Adam, the reality was that John Wayne Gacy was not actually going around killing people dressed as a clown. It is true that he was a clown, but only towards the end of like his killing rampage. But there is no solid evidence whatsoever that he used Pogo the Clown to stalk and hunt his victims.
So was it just like a side hustle that he was a clown, or that was just his job?
It was a side hustle.
Right.
That's the best way to describe it, because he did a lot of stuff, right? But it is an aspect that the press really into, which ends up inspiring a whole genre of horror, from Stephen King's Killer Clown and Pennywise in the It novels. You got Twisty, the Killer Clown from American Horror Story, as you amazingly picked out as well. In fact, Adam, the data suggests that in the aftermath of this case, there is a real observable correlation between the story and the rising fear of clowns across America. This is kind of where people think that this might have come from.
I was going to say, up until this point, were people quite happy with clowns? They just turned up at kids' parties, they honked their nose and did whatever. And then this story got out, and this is where...
I think so. I think for a time. But then I also think there's an element of pineapple on pizza, whereby a few people kicked off about it. It went viral, and then all of a sudden everyone just hates pineapple on pizza. But I have to say, I fucking love pineapple on pizza.
Do you know what? With the right kind of ham...
It has to be a salty ham. Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of chili. It's okay.
Yeah, and we know that because we experimented. You got to experiment, guys.
It was college.
Oh, you mean you got to experiment like college?
Yeah.
But Adam, the reality was far more terrifying in that he preyed on his victims under the guise of actually a very well-respected, upstanding member of the community. And he was. Like, John Wayne Gacy was a businessman. He was active in local politics, very well known in the community, apparently reliable, very charming, overly charming, in fact, which is yet another reminder that evil, more often than not, lurks amongst us in plain sight. And I think that makes us more terrifying.
Do you know what? I've come to learn there's 3 types of killers. The really like rough and ready ones that you expect. Yeah.
Like a clown.
Then you've got the ones that just hide in plain sight. They're like the family men. And then you've got these really charming, like well-to-do, maybe high-flying people.
Yeah, Ted Bundy would probably be in between those two. I don't think he was too high-flying, but he was very intelligent, charming, really good looking with the ladies. When we did the Hillside Stranglers as well, both of those boys, apart from, I think, was it Angelo, the first guy? He was really attractive and charming. In fact, they used him as the way to lure the women in.
Yes, yeah.
And so, Adam, it goes that John Wayne Gacy led this double life in a system, though, that kept failing to stop him. And it's because of how he presented himself to the world. The magnitude of what John Wayne Gacy did, Adam, is just wild. Here's the thing. His killing period was just a little over 6 years, and yet he managed to kill more than 30 men and boys, sexually assaulting them before murdering them and then burying them under his house, which he shared with his wife and 2 stepdaughters.
What? So was he closeted then?
Yeah, he was gay. Oh, well, take that back.
I just know it
That sounds weird.
Yeah, that's right.
Ew, he's gay.
I just mean like, wow, that guy's got a lot going on.
Yeah, so much going on, especially when you consider the other things that he was doing in his life as well. Yet he was killing all these people as well.
Okay, wow.
So Adam, today on the Compendium, I'm going to tell you the horrific story of John Wayne Gacy. Not so much the killer clown that the media would have you believe. Instead, we'll find out who the real John Wayne Gacy was, the scale of the horror of what he did, but also how he was able to get away with what he did for so long, all while hiding in plain sight.
Okay, I am ready to be educated.
Educated and horrified.
Yeah, it sounds like it might be a bit of a hard listen.
And there are a lot of, obviously, victims. And I'm also not going to go into the gruesome details. There will be some horrifying aspects of this, which your imagination will definitely run wild with you. But we're not going to, obviously, go and cover every single one. We're only like an hour podcast, which goes on for an hour and a half many times. So we can't cover them all.
Thanks to you.
So I actually kind of sort of did what you did in your stories, actually, where I start with the last victim and then bounce back to the beginning, because what you've just heard with Robert Strange's disappearance is actually the moment where everything starts to fall apart for John Wayne Gacy. Elizabeth has just walked into the Des Plaines Police Department and has reported her son Robert missing. And what is interesting, Adam, is that the moment she reports him missing is very much the outlier experience in the story, in that the lieutenant on duty, a guy called Joseph Kozenzak, actually agrees that the situation seems concerning, especially because Robert had said that he would only be a couple minutes.
So John must have been very quick at capturing or kidnapping the boy, right?
Yeah, it must have been just within a couple minutes, right? Because after 30 minutes, he was not on that site. He was not in that car park. And what I mean by being an outlier in the story is that so often we hear cops recall the same old kind of rehearsed line, right? Like, it's only been a few hours, come back in a couple days, for example. And you're like, My son said he'd be 2 minutes. He is not there.
Something's up.
But from what Joseph could see, Elizabeth and Ken, they were respectable middle-class parents. Robert clearly came from a good family. And so for probably, Adam, the only time in the story, the police treat this missing report with the urgency that sadly none of the other reports received. So after speaking to his team, Lieutenant Joseph Kozenczak decides that he's going to look into it. He starts by speaking to Robert's boss. He is a guy named Phil Torf at the Nissan pharmacy, since he was likely the last person to have seen Robert, right? Phil tells Joseph that a contractor named John Wayne Gacy had been carrying out work at the pharmacy. And if Robert had said that he was going off to speak to someone about a potential laboring job, this was likely the guy. So Lieutenant Joseph Kozenczak, he tracks down John Wayne Gacy. He asks him if he would mind coming down to the station for just a chat. But by 11 p.m. that night, John still hasn't turned up to the police station. Just as Joseph was getting ready to leave, the phone rang, and it was John. He apologized, saying that he was having car trouble, and asked if he still wanted him to come in. And Joseph was like, yes, yeah. When can you get here?
Why would that excuse you just because you got car issues?
Exactly. I think it's because it was so late at night, right? To which John said that, yes, I could be there within the next 30 minutes. But Adam, 2 hours go by, and John Wayne Gacy still hasn't turned up. And by this point, Joseph has decided to go home for the night. It's not until 3:20 that morning that John finally arrives at the station.
Has he been doing some cleanup, I feel?
The officer on duty remembers him being covered in wet mud all over his clothes and his shoes. So whatever he did to get that filthy must have happened within the last couple of hours.
That's weird.
The officer tells John to come back in the morning, and when he does, they hand out the usual line of questioning, which ends up with John basically saying he doesn't know anything about Robert's disappearance. And at the time, the cops have no reason to not believe what he's saying. On the surface, he seems like a very decent guy. They knew he was very active in the community. He was a local business owner, part of, like Adam, multiple groups around town. And by all accounts, the man answering their questions was extremely charismatic, standing in front of them. But Lieutenant Joseph Kozenczak does something that seems like no other detective in this story seems to have done. He decides to do a basic follow-up check. And when he does, he finds something very concerning, something that just does not line up with the upstanding member of the community persona that was sitting in front of him just hours before. And that was that John Wayne Gacy had previously served time in Iowa for the sodomy of a 15-year-old boy when he himself was just 26 years old.
Oh, so he's got a record then.
He has a record that, Adam, and again, this is the end of this story, essentially. No other cop, no other report of a missing boy has ever picked this up.
But then, has he been questioned before on other missing people?
He has, yes.
Oh, so this isn't even the first time.
It's not, no. And so Joseph, thinking that basically this must be a different John Wayne Gacy, he looks a little bit deeper, and he also finds another outstanding charge for battery from Chicago. So with just these two pieces of information, the picture already seems very different to the one that John Wayne Gacy had painted for himself when he was being questioned. And so Lieutenant Joseph Kozenczak decides that John Wayne Gacy needed to be looked into with even more detail, with a finer comb. And this basically is a moment that ends up finally bringing John Wayne Gacy down. What Joseph will uncover is that John Wayne Gacy may have been responsible for murdering as many as 33 people between the years 1972 and 1978. That is, Adam, a period of just 6 years. Mostly young men who John sexually assaulted before murdering and then often burying them beneath his house. Isn't that just terrifying?
I find it strange that no one, if he's been questioned before and no one's picked up on this, like how hard did this detective have to just look into his past?
Yeah.
Or are all these other officers that have been on this case or other cases have just gone, when they've questioned him, oh, he's a good man of the community, businessman, I'm not going to really look into it.
Adam, it is a bunch of things. Like the reason it took so many victims before detectives finally started connecting the dots was partly because of who his victims were. Many of them were classed as runaways, or they were young gay men who, frankly, people did not care enough about at the time. But crucially, it was also largely down to how John Wayne Gacy presented himself to the world. But another major factor, probably the biggest one, is the idea of a centralized police database that just didn't exist. You can easily link a case across state jurisdictions, which is something John absolutely took advantage of. But the important thing was that Lieutenant Joseph Kozenczak has now connected a couple of dots. And it is this that pushes him to now dig deeper. And so Joseph gets a warrant to search John's house. In the bins in his kitchen, he finds a receipt, right, for a roll of film that has been developed and processed at the Nissan pharmacy, the same pharmacy that John had been renovating, and also the same pharmacy that Robert was working at, right? So it makes sense that, I've got a roll of film, let me get this developed. The wild thing is that the receipt is not even a big deal to the cops. They almost just left it in the bin, like it just wasn't on their radar. They're not even sure if it's even evidence. It's only by chance when they show the receipt to Robert's family that they confirm that it actually belonged to a friend of Robert's who had asked him to get the film developed at work. And so by a brilliant stroke of luck, Adam, this is the only thing that firmly links Robert to John's house. And they almost missed it.
Just a receipt.
Only a receipt. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's got nobody's name or any details on that. So I can't believe that was the link.
Yeah, a single link that you could have easily just missed. And that's the thing about the story, is that there's so many clues that are there, but people just don't look at it with more detail. And again, like I said, this is the moment that John gets busted. And yet the chance of them linking that receipt to John is just so small. If they hadn't, John Wayne Gacy would have probably gone on to kill even more people. But as well as a receipt, the cops also find a Maine West High School graduation ring. It didn't belong to Robert, but it is strange to the cops because John didn't actually go to Maine West High. And as far as he could tell, he didn't have any sons that were living in the house with him. But even with this receipt, Adam, is still not enough to conclusively tie John to Robert's disappearance. And so the police needed something else. And so Joseph instructs the cops to start following him to see what he does next. What is wild is that John is very much aware that the police are following him, to the point, Adam, that he invites them out to lunch on multiple occasions.
So I was going to say, like, he knows that they've got this receipt, right? Or they've been to his house.
Yeah, they're onto him. He knows they're onto him.
So what? Now he's just going to show that he's got, like, nothing to hide?
You're so right there, yes. So this is either a very risky game that he's playing, or he's been very strategic, saying, look, you're wasting your time with me, I've nothing to hide. Or, Adam, he genuinely thinks that he is smarter than the police and that he will get away with this, that he can cover his tracks up. And we know it's the latter because eventually it turns out that they weren't wasting their time at all. So while the cops are following John, Joseph starts digging into John's background, which pretty quickly makes them very certain that he was indeed responsible for Robert's disappearance.
Okay, so what does he find?
So let me tell you a bit about John, shall we? So he's born John Wayne Gacy on the 17th of March, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. He is the second child of John and Marion Gacy. And just like we've seen from a lot of killers, his childhood, Adam, it's wrought with abuse and instability. His father is a raging alcoholic, with John, his siblings, and his mother obviously bearing the brunt of his violent temper, which included, Adam, systematic abuse, both physically and sexually.
Really?
It's awful.
So this is another kind of learnt behavior then, is what we're saying?
It could be. It's not to say that everyone who comes from an abusive family ends up like this, but it certainly seems to be a pattern, doesn't it? When John is finally arrested, he talks a lot about his childhood. One of the things that he vividly remembers is how his father would spend hours by himself in the basement, and the whole family were always forbidden from going down there. And John says that he would often hear different voices coming from down there. So his father had other people down there with him. And they weren't friends, otherwise there wouldn't have been all the secrecy, right? He would have seen them coming through the house or whatever. At the end of the night, he would then come up stinking drunk and would routinely assault the whole family. He says that most days they spent living in fear of that moment when he finally stumbled up from the basement. And that one time, he beat his mother so badly that he knocked her teeth out, chased her into the street, and then when he caught her, just continued to attack her with no regard who was watching.
That is crazy.
He just didn't care.
That is a very violent man. And like, I'm guessing, did he ever get arrested? People were too scared to leave. He's like the breadwinner, so they're trapped in this scenario, I guess.
We're also like talking 40s and 50s as well. Different dynamic. The man is in control of the household and it's a domestic issue. Very often police would turn a blind eye to it. So I don't know the dynamics of it, but it sounds horrific. Now, when John Gacy turns 18, he gets really into politics, specifically the local Democrats for a time. And he hoped that maybe one day this would lead to a career. But by 20, Adam, the desperation to just get away from the abuse causes him to run away. It's after he falls behind on a car payment that he owes to his dad. His dad ends up taking the keys away, which basically cuts him off from the only escape that he has from that house. And so one day he's just like, fuck it. He steals a car. He knows that he is going to get an absolute beating if he comes back. And so he just decides that he's going to run away to Vegas. When he gets there, he does the responsible thing and he gambles away all the money that he's got.
Of course, you're in Vegas, right?
Yeah. I think he goes with like $136. He spends most of it on like motels and petrol getting there. He arrives $25 and he's like, well, maybe put it all on black. Maybe I'll...
Yeah, you could turn that into something, right?
Exactly. So he ends up sleeping in his car, which in Nevada is actually really dangerous because it's brutally hot, even in the morning. So he goes to bed at night. He wakes up, it's like 9 a.m. The sun is beating into his car and he gets heat stroke. He ends up passing out. By the time he wakes up, he is already in an ambulance. Someone has called an ambulance for him.
Really?
And the thing is, though, he's got no way of actually paying for it.
Oh, and this is probably, was this before they even had like emergency kind of care like this?
I have no idea. But the point is that he has to pay for this ambulance. He's like, let me out, let me out. They're like, we've already given you treatment. You're on your way to the hospital. Too late. You were passed out. You shouldn't have passed out. And it's like, I can't control that.
You should have left me.
So to pay off his debts to the hospital, he offers to wash ambulances. But for whatever reason, you apparently have to be like 21 in order to do that. So instead, someone at the hospital, they find him work at a local mortuary. And Adam, it is here that apparently one night when John is all alone, he gets this urge to climb into one of the coffins containing the body of a young boy, like a teenage boy, right? He says that the experience leaves him with an erection, which actually frightens him. And I guess maybe it made him realize that he was perhaps gay.
Yeah, but with a dead man? A dead boy?
Do you reckon it could be like necrophilia? I don't think it is a necrophilia. I think it is just that he's
just with or close to another
boy.
But even still, a teenage boy, which sounds like he's younger than 16, and he's dead. So that's still not okay.
Yeah. I think he even arranges the body on top of him.
Oh.
And it just freaks him out. Either way, him being this freaked out results in him calling his mum to ask whether or not their dad will allow him to come back home. And stroke of luck, he does. And so he goes back to Chicago. He's just like, I can't deal with this.
So he's like,
it's definitely woken something up in him, hasn't it?
It's something. I don't know what to make of that.
No, it's freaky, isn't it? But it is a key detail in the story because back in Illinois, John eventually enrolls at Northwestern Business College and he ends up graduating in 1963, where he takes a job as a trainee at a shoe company. Adam, a year later, he manages to rise up to department manager, and it's here that he actually meets a woman called Marilyn Myers, and soon after this, they start dating. And so on the surface, he's really turned a corner. He is in the process of building a respectable life for himself, despite the abuse that he grew up with. So this is the thing, like we always say, people who end up killing people, they come from a real broken home. But he actually seems to kind of like be dealing with it well. Like in spite of everything that I've been through, I'm actually well adjusted. I'm actually really smart, clever. I look sharp. I've got a bit of a business kind of mind on me. And he seems to be coming out of it.
Yeah, which I'm sure a lot of people can do. But I'm guessing that there's still something inherently flawed within him, right?
Well, we know that, don't we?
Yeah, he's just got an erection over a dead person.
Problematic.
That's your first clue.
But here's the thing about him, which will kind of change your tune. He is extremely image conscious. There's something very performative about almost everything that he does. The best way to describe him is to say that he is the classic salesman type, always looking the part, talking the talk. He's also really extremely arrogant as well. Like people who know him say that he is a blowhard, someone who would talk endlessly at you and always about himself.
Okay. So he loves himself a little bit.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. The best way to sum him up is that salesman person. We've all worked with them. We all know them, you know. So eventually, after 6 months of dating Marilyn in 1964, they get married. And after the wedding, they end up moving to Waterloo in Iowa, where Marilyn's father sets John up as a manager of 3 of his KFC restaurants. And Adam, is not a bad gig for a 22-year-old because he is earning the equivalent of about $130,000 a year by today's standards.
Damn.
At 22!
I don't know what I don't think I was working. I was unemployed.
And one of the first things that he does as manager, he sets up a sort of clubhouse in one of the basements of the restaurants for his employees, mostly teenagers. And he wants to create somewhere where they can hang out, they can play pool. But of course, Adam, this is somewhere where John is able to ply them with alcohol and then make sexual advances on them.
Right.
He would do this thing where, like, if you tried it on and you rejected him, he would gaslight you and say that he was joking or tell you that you were just imagining it.
Yeah, I guess, is he trying to, like, because one, at that time, obviously being gay, obviously was...
It's all taps and symbols, isn't it? And like handkerchiefs and like clues and like, oh, brush your hand a little bit.
Yeah, so he's trying
touch
to like...
your penis, flick it.
Yeah, all those things.
Oh, is that not okay?
He's trying to suss that out, which fair enough if you are closeted, yes, but then obviously gaslighting someone and being abusive to them.
Yeah, that's it. So it seems pretty clear that he is obviously keen to explore whatever that thing was that awoke in him when he got into that coffin in that mortuary, which is gross. Around the same time, John also joins the local junior chamber, which is a not-for-profit organization focused on teaching business development, management skills, and networking for kind of people, mostly boys between the ages of 18 and 40 years old. Which sounds noble, but Adam, in practice, it's quite literally a boys' club. Because rather than focusing on what the junior chambers were supposed to do, members just sit around watching porn, or they would hire sex workers. And for some, they used the chamber as like a swingers club where they would literally bring their wives and just swap their wives around.
So it's a bit like a brothel.
Yeah, this is like a not-for-profit charity. That's wild.
I don't know any charities like that.
No, but I goddamn wanna. And because John manages 3 KFC restaurants, he often supplies the food like to these little events, which is a gross image of them all just sitting around wanking, eating greasy chicken with their greasy chicken fingers. It is so rank.
There's little lemon wet wipes. They don't go far enough.
Yeah. Oops. Eventually, he starts insisting people, that's his colleagues and his staff, to call him the Colonel.
Oh, God.
It's just, I don't know what, there's nothing wrong with that sentence, but I don't know, it just in this context, it just makes you feel a bit sick.
I feel like he's slimy.
Yes!
And just, I don't want him near me.
And as time goes on, John rises quickly through the ranks at the junior chamber. And like, it really doesn't take long either. He is voted in as vice president within like a year. And he is 23 at this point.
Wow. He's doing well for himself in that respect.
Yeah, and again, it's all down to how he talks and how he presents himself. He can talk the talk, walk the walk. He comes across credible. He supplies chicken. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, John, with the chicken?
Oh, we just got a little something there. Let me dab that up for you. At one point, he's even recognized as the 3rd most outstanding JC member or colleague in the entire state of Iowa. So he's good at this. And again, like I said, it's mostly people skills. He knows how to talk. But it's a couple of years after this that things start to take a turn for him, right? His little clubhouse in the KFC basement results in him sexually assaulting 2 boys after they end up rejecting him. Amazingly, the first is actually the son of another junior chamber member that he works with. So that's his colleague.
That's really risky.
Apparently, John lured him back to his house with a promise of showing him a porno movie, which he then got him drunk, and then he basically assaulted him. The other boy he assaults is one of his employees. John basically offers to drive him home after his shift one night, and then they magically end up at his house, where again, John shows him a porno, he gets him drunk, and then during the assault, John ends up choking him until he's almost unconscious. When the boy finally comes round, John is like, sorry, I didn't think that would hurt. And then he drives him home.
And what do these boys do? Do they report him?
Adam, some of them do. Some of them don't. And we'll explain why in a minute.
Is that kind of like shame almost?
Yes, that's exactly it. Not just for these boys, but also to their families at a time when being gay or like being involved in something like this is a little bit shameful.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Surprise, surprise. A few days later, John fires the boy, which I guess is because things are probably a bit awkward around the fryers, right?
Well, that's an understatement. I would not even want to work with this guy.
Yeah, it's crazy. But the detail that makes this especially disturbing is where the fuck is Marilyn while all this is going on? Right? This is at his house.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out, Adam, Marilyn is in hospital giving birth to their 2nd child.
Oh, so while she's away...
Yeah, away, giving birth, doing the most beautiful thing a woman can do.
He's getting his jollies from attacking his workers.
It's gross. So in the story of John Wayne Gacy, these are the first 2 known physical assaults that he carries out. And these were actually the charges that Lieutenant Joseph Cousinsack first uncovered. That was the sodomy charge and also the battery charge. That was with these 2 boys.
Oh, so they did report it then?
So these two boys did, yes, but others didn't. Apparently, the first boy told his dad what had happened, that his colleague basically had attacked him. And so he goes to the police, and eventually John is charged with sodomy of a 15-year-old boy. When the news ends up spreading throughout the town, more boys start coming forward saying similar things had happened to them. Of course, this is massively damaging to his reputation. And so to get ahead of this, John insists to the police that he take a lie detector test, which he fails twice. He's like, no. Let's do a do-over. I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do it again.
I'll do it right this time.
Yeah. And like, sir, you failed again. Sorry. And Adam, when I say he failed, I mean he failed hard. Apparently the only question he got right was his name.
What else was he asked?
Just all sorts of things, but he failed every single one of them.
What does his wife make of this? Like, he's just had another child.
Exactly. Of course, Marilyn seems to have a little bit of sense because she will eventually divorce him, right?
And what, he's 23, 24 at this point?
Yeah. And the reason the sentence is so heavy is because the court ordered a psychiatric evaluation of him. And the results basically said that he, A, was not remorseful, that he continued to deny all responsibility, and instead presented himself as a victim of circumstance in this.
How is he the victim?
But that's how he saw it. And based on that, they deemed that he was very likely to offend. And so the judge, this early on, saw this for what this was, and he made the decision to sentence him to 10 years in prison, saying the sentence is intended to make certain that for a period of time, you cannot seek out teenage boys to solicit them for immoral behavior of any kind.
That is the right thing, right? I think the judge could clearly see that, yeah, he would attack again. And I felt like the law, the justice system was doing the right thing.
But here's a really maddening thing, though, is that sentence is based on the court's view that he will probably reoffend, right? But the prison system, Adam, is not the same as the court system. They operate completely independently. And so because John is basically a model inmate, they parole him after 18 months.
And that's just him probably talking the talk, schmoozing, all that sort of stuff, which we know he's good at.
Yeah. But it's not just that, it's also being well behaved.
Yeah.
Of course, while he's in prison, Marilyn, she gets the sense, she divorces him, she takes the kids. I don't think he ever sees them again either.
Oh, really?
And so when he's released, he can't exactly stay in town, since now obviously he is a pariah. And so in 1970, John moves back to Chicago to live with his mother. God knows what he must have told her. I don't even know if she even knows the full story. Of course, one of the conditions of his probation is that he stay the fuck away from teenage boys.
Yeah.
But just a few months after being released in February 1971, John sees a boy hanging around the bus station and offers to drive him home. I'm not sure if he spotted doing this or if he attacked the boy and then the boy reported him, but it's a direct violation of his probation. So it looks like he's about to go back to jail. But when it comes to his hearing, the boy actually doesn't show up in court. And so the judge drops the charges. Isn't that wild?
So he doesn't show up. Is that because he's missing?
He's not missing, no. Again, it's probably that shame factor that we talked about.
Or he's paid someone to scare him off because he's done that before.
Possibly, and we just don't know about it. Then again, a little while later, he gets caught a second time luring a teenage boy into his car, just this time using a police badge. Again, he is dragged to a probation hearing. So, they know that he did this. There is no question, by the way. But his lawyer managed to prove that the boy had blackmailed him. And when John didn't pay up, that's when the boy finally reported him, which is wild. There is no question that John assaulted him, regardless of whether or not the boy tried to blackmail him. But because of that, they were like, yeah, he may have assaulted you, but you did blackmail him, so we're going to drop the charges.
All right, so two wrongs make a right.
Basically, yeah, one does not cancel out the other. The point is that it is clear that he has violated his policy, and yet 2 times, John does not go back to jail.
I'm like, surely the justice system can see that this guy, he was sent away for 10 years originally, and he's out offending again.
There's a very good reason for that. Because eventually in October 1971, John's probation ends. And as far as the probation office in Iowa is concerned, he has stayed out of trouble. And it's because nothing is joined up across the state lines. There's no centralized database where they can go, okay, so he was not living in Iowa for the last couple of years. Maybe we should check to see whether or not he has any records in Chicago to see if maybe he's violated his probation. They don't check that. They just check the state of Iowa and they go, yeah, he's fine. And so basically, nope, clean, you're free to go.
That is crazy.
It's wild, isn't it? And so when John went back to Chicago, this whole time that he was there, even though he was still attacking these boys, he was trying his very best to try and rebuild his reputation. And it's because reputation and what other people think of him is so important to him. It is the most vital thing in his entire life. I read a story that when he was like at his lowest, he was working as like a cook in a restaurant. So he has no status or no standing amongst his peers. So in order to elevate himself, he would tell people that his ex-wife was a relative of Colonel Sanders himself.
He's obsessed
with chicken.
Yeah.
It's gross. And so it's just such a meaningless lie. But amongst the people that he surrounds himself with, it's important that they believe that he is a somebody.
And are they like, do you know the secret 5-spice recipe?
Yeah, it's literally like scrapings from 5 of the Spice Girls. And 11 men called Herb. They just kind of go up to his beard and they scratch his beard until they get some of the kind of the crustings off, kind of flakes, and they combine them all together. And that's the secret 11 herbs and spices.
That's gross.
Yeah. So eventually he moves from being a cook. He ends up starting up his own construction business. He mostly hires young teenage apprentices. Okay, problematic. We know something's coming. And just like he did with his previous employees, he would often badger them for sex. And Adam, of course, it was almost always a no. But being very young, they would often come to him for a wage sub, or they'd ask if they can borrow his car. And so he starts using this in exchange for sexual favors. So rank.
Yeah.
At this point, John's business is now growing and he has amassed a huge amount of tools and building materials, which is difficult to store at his mum's apartment that they're living in at the time. And so in 1971, the same year his probation is lifted, he persuades his mother to buy them a house at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in Norwood Park. This, of course, is the house that's going to be very central to all of his murders.
And then is his dad still around at this point? Is it just his mum?
It sounds like either he's dead or they're divorced. So I don't know. Which actually, Adam, now that he's got this house, brings us to his first murder. He is a 16-year-old boy called Timothy McCoy, who in 1972 was traveling from Michigan to Nebraska, and he ends up stopping over in Chicago for the night. And I think Timothy was just planning on sleeping there until his connection. But I also think that this is somewhere John was able to spot vulnerable men, like just arriving in town who like need a place to stay.
Yeah, clearly he's preying on these people who are passing through.
He knows where to go.
Perhaps don't have families or whatever, runaways themselves.
Sure, exactly. John persuades Timmy to let him show him around Chicago, which Timmy agrees to. And at the end of the day, John invites him back to the house, saying that he will drop him back at the station in the morning. Now, it's not clear if anything happened during that night, but John later says that when he woke up the next morning, Timmy was standing in his bedroom doorway holding a kitchen knife. So John charged at him, he got the knife off of him, and then used the knife to stab him multiple times until he was dead. So it sounds like he is trying to frame this as self-defense, which already sounds like it's bullshit.
Yeah, like why would the 16-year-old boy want to kill you?
Yes, but Adam, it gets so much worse because John then says that when he went into the kitchen, that he saw that Timmy had made them both breakfast and that he was standing in his doorway so he could wake John up. And he just so happened to be holding a bread knife in his hand because he was making breakfast. So he killed him by accident.
Do you think that's true?
Well, this is the thing, right? He says that he didn't assault the boy, but to wake up and interpret seeing a guest standing in your doorway with a knife as them coming to attack you says that you likely did assault them the following morning. They've come to terms with it and now come to get you, right?
That's what I think. And for someone just to make you breakfast, maybe they would have done a nice thing, but normally they just call you down, right?
So it could be that Timmy was gay and that this was a consensual thing that had happened and he was doing something nice, so he liked him. But then maybe he did assault him and that's why he maybe misinterpreted him standing in the doorway. I don't know.
That's what it feels like. But yeah, I guess we'll never know really.
So after the murder, Adam, John says that he buries Timmy's body in the crawl space under the house. But the important thing is that John later says that this is the moment that he realizes that killing someone was the ultimate thrill.
So when you say under the house, is that like where houses are built on stilts and you can go underneath?
That's what I think. But a couple images that I have seen, it seems like there is like, it's built on like a concrete base where you can go under. It's almost like a tunnel. I don't know. I'm not sure how it works, but I think you can access it from the inside.
Fine, because I was just trying to work out how do you bury someone under a house that's already there?
Yeah, there must be enough headroom for you to kind of work under there. Do you know what I mean? But also, what is wild to think about is that murder was not necessarily the thing that John had been consciously building towards for years, right? Like so many serial killers, they always have this fantasy of what that must feel like. Instead, for John, this is just one terrible moment that in hindsight has unlocked something in him. And I find that really interesting. I don't think John is very introspective as a person because something similar happened years earlier when he got into that coffin. It's in that moment that he first realizes that he might be gay. You just assume that people just know themselves, right? Like, you just know that you're gay, or like you just are really into like My Little Pony, or like that you really want to wear an adult-sized Elsa dress. Do you know what I mean? You just have that feeling inside you. That's what you want to do.
Do you want to talk about something?
I do, actually, later.
But then I guess this feeling of, or that thrill of killing someone for the first time, he's abused people before and he's been violent with them, right? So he's clearly got this tendency and then he's just taken it to a new level. Yeah. And I guess from that's kind of like a new thrill, right? It's something different.
So I guess what you're saying there is was building up?
Yeah, I just feel like there's a pattern. And given his abuse as a kid, that kind of, I don't know, repeating that behavior. I don't know. I just feel like maybe there was something underlying a lot longer, but then this just, it's a whole new level.
Yeah, but I just find it so surprising that it takes these big moments for him to kind of have these realizations, which makes me think that he is not a very introspective person.
But then don't they say most serial killers or male killers turn into killers when they're in their 30s?
Oh, really? If it's a profile? Possibly.
I'm sure there was a point as an age, if you're going to be a serial killer, we would have done it by now.
Yeah. Oh, damn. We missed the boat, basically.
We've missed the boat.
Well, we're still in our 30s. That's fine. Shh. So even before John murders Timmy, he's actually dating a woman called Carol Hoff. She already has 2 daughters from a previous marriage. And Adam, in August 1972, so this is just a few weeks after John has killed Timothy, Carol and the girls, they move into his house.
That was sudden. But then I guess this is a great cover-up story for him because he's with a woman, he's got a family. No one's ever going to suspect him of doing any wrongdoing.
Yeah, but why would you do that? I just wouldn't waste my time. If I was gay, I wouldn't waste my time with a woman.
Yeah, but back then, you've probably got to pretend. Otherwise, people start questioning things. If he's getting into his 30s and he's still single.
Possibly, I don't know. I'm not someone from the 70s. So after Carol moves in, she starts to notice a strange smell that's circulating around the house anytime the heating or the air conditioning is turned on. And it's basically because air is being pulled from underneath the house, right? It gets to the point, Adam, where it begins attracting swarms of flies everywhere.
Oh, God.
And Carol literally thinks that it's a dead rat or something under the house. John, however, tells her that it's just a broken sewer pipe and that he will deal with it. And so he starts lugging like 50-pound bags of lime under the house and just like covering wherever the body is buried. What he doesn't realize is that this actually accelerates the decomposition of the body and just makes the smell worse.
Oh, God.
Eventually, Carol and the girls, they leave to go visit family. And when he's away, John decides to pour cement on the area where Timmy was buried. And I mean, the flies do go away, but there's always this just faint smell that still hangs around. Again, especially when the heating or the cooling is turned on.
Yeah, and I imagine if he's going to hide more bodies under this house, like this is a smell that's just never going away. And if I was that woman, I'd be like, can we move?
Yeah, exactly. And this is amazing to me. He and Carol, they're getting very, very serious. They now live together. In fact, he proposes. And while they're making plans to get married, he, on the regular, is going out tonight looking for young boys. And I think it's like a week before the Jews get married. He actually gets arrested yet again after a boy says that John forced him into a sexual act. And when he refused, he tries to then get out the car and John apparently tries to run him over. Of course, John tells Carol it's all a mistake and that he's innocent. And whatever he tells her, she buys it. But I can't get my head around what excuse he could have come up with to make someone believe that a sexual assault accusation was just a misunderstanding.
Do you remember, and I don't know if this is the right thing to reference at this point.
Okay.
Little Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember there was a guy that would always, I think he was in the public eye, it's played by David Walliams, which again is another issue.
The politician.
Yeah, politician, and he would have his wife there standing right next to him while he'd have to explain that he found himself in an awkward situation and that it was a complete accident that he fell over naked on some woman or whatever.
Yeah, on the 15th of July, I found myself in the train station toilets at Waterloo Station when I was having a wee, when a young man fell over a roll of toilet paper and landed right in my crotch, and conveniently his mouth landed firmly on the end of my penis, and In pain and in exhaustion, he started screaming, but with the obstruction of his penis inside my mouth, he began sucking on it. It's just stupid like that. It's just ridiculous. So, yes.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't expect you to go into that much detail.
But yeah, that's the gist. But here's the thing. When the boy's family decides to drop the charges, he uses this to drum home to Carol that, see, I told you it was all just a misunderstanding. But this just keeps happening. When people accuse him of assaulting them, they always end up dropping the charges more often than not. And it's really sad because it tells you something about the stigma associated with male sexual assault, especially in light of attitudes towards gay men around about this time. Like families feel embarrassed or ashamed by it. And so for John, these problems just keep going away so conveniently.
Yeah, because you probably just don't want your neighbors finding out and all that sort of stuff in the news.
And when they don't drop the charges, the problem comes from the cops who refuse to take any of these accusations seriously. So it's coming from all different directions. It's another factor that allows John to evade being caught for so long.
But the thing is, if he's getting into so much trouble, and so there's so many instances that, okay, fair enough, the boys go quiet, there is surely something there the police must or could have done.
Yeah. Here's the other factor. It's John standing in the community, Adam. He's charismatic. He is well liked. He also knows a huge amount of influential figures like politicians and police officers. And so when it comes to him being held to account for any of this, his influential friends, right, they're there ready to vouch for him, right? And there are a lot of them. He becomes known for hosting these huge summer parties, sometimes with more than 400 guests, including local politicians and other well-connected people from the community. So when police speak to them, they're like, that doesn't sound like the John that we know. You must have it wrong. This must be an understanding. And so, yeah, it goes away.
Do you think some of these other people in the community that have this higher standing are also probably a bit corrupt?
I mean, if what's happening right now with all the Epstein files is anything to go by, it makes us realize that there's a lot of people up the top that are very corrupt. So I wouldn't be surprised. After that 10 years ago, I would have been, nah. People are naturally good. No, there's pedophiles everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, side note, Adam, all these people that are turning up to this party at his house have absolutely no idea that there are bodies buried all over the place. They've just no idea. It's so grim.
But he's already put cement down. So is he like broken up that cement to then put more bodies in the ground?
It's a big crawl space. So I think he's only cementing the area where the bodies are.
Oh, okay.
I think, yeah. And so, Adam, here's the thing. So Timothy was murdered in 1972. And by 1973, John has this whole kind of setup at his house. He tells Carol and the girls that he has converted the garage into a workshop for business and that they are to stay out of it because there's a lot of dangerous equipment in there. In reality, he has set it up to do sex stuff with a lot of the teenage boys in the area. A lot of it is consensual. No, that's wrong to say. A lot of it is predatory, but he's not beating them up and bringing them there. The boys have come there himself, right? Even though they're minors.
Are these gay boys themselves, or I guess could be a mixture, right?
Yeah, people exploring this. I don't know. Who knows? It's
Right.
just
They agreed to come back willingly.
And so following him setting this up, he starts working late into the night. He tells Carol that he is out prospecting for construction jobs, saying that he is more productive at night because he can get more done. He can have more productive conversations with clients and prospects.
Who is going to be wanting to do work at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m.?
I'm sorry, but there is just no way Carol fully buys this. There's just no way.
I would think so, but then is she so blind to his good standing in the public community that she doesn't?
Maybe. But again, if she does, I've completely lost all respect for her because the alarm bells are going off left, right, and center. For example, one red flag is that Carol finds some pornographic magazines under the sink.
Gay pornographics?
Gay pornographic magazines, but also much darker fetish magazines featuring men covered in blood.
Ooh.
I don't know where you get those from.
No, I don't. But also, under the sink of all the places to leave your porn stash.
Exactly. John says that when they first got together, he did tell her that she was bisexual, but apparently she thought that he was joking. Even when holding these magazines in her hand, she doesn't quite believe it. She's like, oh, wow, that must be part of his joke. It's just wild. She also starts seeing loads of local teenage boys coming and going from the garage as well. She thinks that they're apprentices at first, but some of them are really young. And she doesn't recognize any of them as being some of his apprentices that she's met at the parties and the work dues and the coming and goings from his garage.
Do you think she just doesn't want to accept the truth?
Possibly. That could be a thing. Another time, she finds a man's wallet and identification that John has just left in the living room. And when she asks about it, he tells her, mind your own business. So, like, the alarm bells are there. Now, obviously, your mind doesn't necessarily just jump straight to, oh my God, my husband is murdering young boys, right?
Oh, no, it's just that he's, having it off with them.
But not even that potentially, but still, something is wrong. At least something's wrong. If not that he's having them off with them, I guess maybe the magazine. But something you'd definitely say something's wrong.
Yeah, you'd want to go into the garage to check what's going on, right?
Yeah, why am I not allowed in there? Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
But also, especially as a mother of 2 young girls that she has to think about, you need to keep your wits about you. Why is your flags not flagging?
Mm.
In 1973, John goes on a business trip to see a property that he's bidding on, and he takes one of his teenage employees with him. Of course, with nowhere to run, John ends up assaulting him on this business trip. It is grim. Afterwards, the boy, Adam, he is forced to stay in the room with him and then has to endure the entire trip back home with him. That must just be horrible.
Mm.
But when they get back, a couple days pass and the boy starts to come to terms with what has happened to him. And so he goes to John's house, and in the front garden, he beats the absolute shit out of him right there in front of Carol and the girls. And John explains this away by saying that the boy had attacked him because he decided not to pay him for the shitty work that he did. And again, there is always an explanation. And Carol always seems to accept it.
I just where there's smoke, man.
Yeah. So they say that John was hunting his victims between 1972 and 1978. This shows you just in itself how prolific he was. But Adam, that's not the full picture. Because remember, he murdered Timothy in 1972. He doesn't commit his second murder until 1974. And so that means in just a 4-year period, he killed 32 more people. That's one every 1.5 months, potentially.
That's a lot.
That's a huge amount. Remember, Carol and the girls are in the house.
And the thing is, that's the people he's killed. The amount of people he's hurt and abused.
Or having sex with, like these minors.
Yeah.
It's horrific. Now, his second known victim is a boy he strangles in 1974. And we never find out who he actually is. And Adam, he's not alone in that. A lot of his victims are never identified. The most recent John Doe is actually identified as recently as 2021. Of course, we can't go through obviously every murder, but the next one that is important to moving the story forward happens in 1975 after John hires a 15-year-old boy called Anthony Antonucci. It's only a couple months later that John does his usual thing. He invites him over, he gets him drunk, plays him a couple porno movies. One of the things that John liked to do is to restrain the boys using a handcuff trick that he shows them. He'll kind of put the cuffs on first, and he'll show them how he can supposedly escape from them. And then once they're impressed, he offers to teach them how to do it.
I see.
Except once they put the handcuffs on, he is like, great, I'm literally now going to rape you. Like, he announces it. It's
Does
gross.
he?
Yeah.
And he admits this when he's...
Yeah, it's gross. In this situation with Anthony manages to free one of his arms. And when he does, he's able to beat the shit out of John and then gets the cuffs on him instead. Suddenly, John is the one begging to be let go, right?
Mm.
Eventually, Anthony does uncuff him. And just before Anthony leaves, John tells him that he is the only one who has ever escaped the cuffs. Not only that, has managed to cuff him back. And that line makes my stomach turn because it tells you that there are a lot of boys that weren't so lucky.
And that this is some kind of sick game for him.
Yeah. He does have another trick which explains the situation with the first boy where he strangles him and he goes, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that would hurt you. It's another trick where he will kind of do like a turnbuckle around your neck with like a rope, and he'll tighten it, and then he just gets carried away and then they'll pass out. But he masks as a trick, hence why it made sense that he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think that would hurt you.
I mean, I would never let anyone do that.
No. So later that same year, one of John's laborers also goes missing. This is an 18-year-old boy called John Butkovich. His family eventually find his car with the keys in the ignition along with his jacket and his wallet. When his father calls John and asks him whether or not he's seen him, John obviously says no and that he is sorry that his son has run away. And his dad is like, nobody said he ran away. Why do you think he'd run away? And so that is like a massive alarm bell for this family, right?
Yeah.
Naturally, they call the police and they tell them that they think that John is involved. But again, when police interview him, John says, I don't know anything. He does, however, admit that yes, the boy did come over and it was to collect some owed wages from 2 months prior. But after that, he left. And his parents are like, no, we know our son. If he was owed wages, we would have known about it. And it would have been the father that went to John's house to collect those wages. It was just how the family operated. He wouldn't have let his son go on his own. And so they are convinced that John has done something. So convinced, in fact, Adam, that they just refuse to let her go. They say that they ended up calling the police more than 100 times, begging them to do something. But based on what John says, based on his reputation, based on his standing in the community, police do not believe that he had anything to do with his disappearance.
I'm sorry. There are just too many signs of people reporting stuff, him clearly getting away, that he must have dirt on someone. There's no way that people or the police could just sweep that under the rug.
Yeah.
I know it's a different time, and yes, you'd be blindsided by someone like this, but 100 times. And then all the other accounts. No, he knows he's in a position of power.
Yeah, it's wild. And again, when John is finally caught, he admits he used the same basic method. Lured John over, got him drunk, showed him the handcuff trick, then attacked and killed him. John's intention was to bury John under the house like the others. But he says that just as he was about to pull the body into the crawl space, Carol and the girls came home. So needing to get rid of the body, he decided to bury him in the garage and then fill it with cement. So there's one body in the garage. All the others are under the crawl space.
Isn't the garage made of cement anyway? How are you?
It was a drain was going to go in that place. So I think maybe when he was doing the renovations, he had sectioned off a section for the drain. But then, in the end, he ended up burying a body in it. So around about the same period, John gets back into politics with the local Democrats. And again, Adam, this bodes really well for his credibility, which is a constant running theme throughout this episode, as we know. Because in less than a year, he manages to work his way up to becoming precinct captain. So that's pretty high up. And at the same time, he gets also involved in the Chicago's annual Polish Constitution Day Parade. In fact, he's appointed as their director, which he's extremely proud of because he is part Polish. The point is that on top of being a business owner and a husband and a father, all of this takes up a huge amount of time. Like, he's organizing parties for more than 400 guests at a time. And yet, this is also his peak killing period, where he's killing the most people, right? That 4-year period, it's like 1.5 a month.
So what you're saying is he can manage a lot of projects.
He's taking Adderall, man. I just genuinely do not understand where he's getting all the time to do all of this. In 1978, he even receives Secret Service clearance to meet First Lady Rosalind Carter as part of his work in politics. And by this point, as we know, he's already murdered a shit ton of people. Like, you have to go through this clearance. And when anyone is like in the room with the president or the first lady, you can see like they're wearing like a Secret Service badge, which means that they've received their clearance. And yet, even the Secret Service have found nothing on him that stops him from meeting the first lady. It really does show how far a warm smile and a charismatic personality can get you.
I still think there's something. He's got dirt on someone.
Do you reckon? I think it's a good theory.
I guess it would have come out probably by now, but I don't know. Something makes me suspicious.
The thing is that once he's finally busted, this clearance the Secret Service gave him becomes a bit of a scandal in how the US government should have not have let this happen. And I assume that week, a few people lost their jobs when that came out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Eventually, Adam, Carol does file for divorce. And when I read why, I had to do a double take because it's not for the reason that you might expect.
That he's a serial killer.
Yeah, it's not like, oh my God, my husband's killing boys and burying them under the house. It's because John freaks out at her for not balancing a checkbook properly. And Carol is like, right, that's the final straw.
That's the final straw. You can bring boys back into that garage all you want.
But the point is, it really does seem like she had no idea what was happening literally in her own home. Which is wild to me.
I don't like people criticizing my math skills, so...
That'll do it.
Yeah.
But it is crazy, like, how you don't know. How does she not know? Like, he's so busy, he's doing this almost every night. Like, I know when you do a silent fart. I know it.
The thing is, though, he's clearly just so good at putting on this show in this front, right? So, I don't know, maybe it's very easy for us to say in hindsight as we look back at this story. We don't know what it's like in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, in the court filings for the divorce, she does cite one of the reasons as all the secrecy. Like, she just didn't know what he was getting up to. But still, I understand the secrecy if he's doing all the stuff away from home, but he's doing it at home. That's the wild thing. But also, Adam, I'm also super relieved that she did finally leave. When I read that those two girls had moved in I genuinely thought that was it for them, that they were going to die.
Yeah, I'd be worried. And when she finds out about what he did, she must be like, oh, that was a lucky escape.
Yeah, 33 bodies. So following the divorce, he goes through a bit of a midlife crisis. He is like, I have no wife, no kids. I have a bit more time in my hands. And so, Adam, he decides that he is finally going to do the thing that he's always wanted to do. He is going to graduate from clown school.
It's good. You should still set yourself new ambitions in midlife.
Yeah, for sure. Little side note. Like I mentioned how the story sort of brought about this hysteria towards clowns in the aftermath, how do you think McDonald's fared in the fallout of all this with Ronald McDonald being a clown?
Was Ronald McDonald a thing back then?
I think it's always been part of their brand. Like, I know he didn't strangle kids, but you could say that he was killing kids through obesity.
Okay, well, that's a bit of a stretch.
I imagine this period of history for McDonald's, for sure, was definitely a bit of a PR nightmare for them.
They're like, oh, we just launched Ronald McDonald. What are we going to do now?
Oh no, roll back, roll back. So he ends up joining the local Jolly Joker Clown Club, where he eventually settles on 2 clown personas. One is called Pogo, named because Po stood for Polish, and Go because he was always on the go.
Okay.
The other one. So Pogo is like the happy clown persona, but he also had Patches, which was more of the serious clown. And he has that kind of classic image you have of a clown, the little triangle hat with a big white face, huge lips. And once he graduates, Adam, he starts working as a clown all over town, at hospitals, kids' parties, pretty much anywhere he performs, he is literally surrounded by kids, which is unsettling.
Is that why he's decided to become a clown? To get closer to kids? Not that's really stopped him from getting close to younger boys.
Well, that's the thing, though. I think the demographic for young kids is not what he's interested in. I think he's more interested in like teenage boys, like 15, 16, 17, 18. I don't know if there's any evidence that he has assaulted anyone younger than that. So, yeah, I don't know. But there is no evidence, though, that he used Pogo or Patches to stalk or hunt his victims, to murder or assault them. But there is one instance which actually lends to a theory that maybe he might have had an accomplice. And it happened in July 1976. John is basically out looking for teenage boys when he spots an 18-year-old boy called David Cran, and he's hitchhiking. Apparently that same night, John offers him a job, and then a month later, David literally moves into the house with him.
He moves in with John?
Yeah. Again, remember, this is his peak killing period, right? Like, he's got to be at least killing one person a month. David Cram actually moves in the day before his 19th birthday. And so to celebrate, John decides that he's going to dress up as Pogo for him, which is creepy as hell in itself. Pogo shows David the handcuff trick. David wants to try it. And as soon as he puts them on, he tells David he is now going to rape him. And that's another detail that came up a bunch of times. He would often just announce that he was going to hurt you. It's just so creepy. But this is the only known instance where he attacks someone dressed up as Pogo. But while this is happening, David manages to kick John in the face, and by a stroke of luck, he managed to escape from the handcuffs. But Adam, get this. After the attack, David continues to live with him for 2 more months. And it's this that causes people to wonder if David was perhaps involved in some of the murders. Remember, this was like his peak killing period, right? He doesn't have time to waste if he is managing to kill 33 people.
Yeah, why would David stay there if he had announced that? So how do we know he said that to David? Is that because John's admitted that's what he said?
Yeah, wild. Adam, it just goes on like this. He gets arrested a few more times for lewd behavior or accused of assaulting other boys, and it just goes nowhere. There is just one exception where one accusation results in a civil lawsuit, but they end up settling in court and he's ordered to pay $3,000 in settlement. But nothing ultimately sticks.
But what happened to David then? So he lived with him for 2 more months. Was he alive?
As far as I'm aware, he's alive. I'm not sure if he testified at the actual trial, but some people who did escape did testify. And I think if they managed to get this information about what happened, it might have come from David. So I assume David is alive. And so, like I said, he just keeps going on these rampages, assaulting boys, murdering them. Nothing ever sticks. He gets pulled up a few times. But Adam, that is not until Lieutenant Joseph Kozenzak decides to do what on paper was just another follow-up check on his background. And then from there, one by one, the dominoes start falling around him, which brings us back to Robert Piest, who, as we know, is John's last victim. By this point, Robert has been reported missing and the police think that John has something to do with this. because of the receipt that they find in his house, which belonged to Robert's friend. The cops have John under 24-hour surveillance and are basically waiting for any reason to arrest him because this will essentially let them search his house. While they're trailing him, they manage to track the ring that they find back to a boy named John Syke, I believe that's how you pronounce it, who just so happens to have been missing for 2 years. So there are now 2 missing boys linked to John. The cops also start speaking to John's employees, which is where they find out 2 more names of boys who mysteriously disappeared and again never returned. So that total is now 4. Obviously, word gets back to John that the police are now sniffing around. And amazingly, he plays along. According to the officers, he would often go out of his way to speak to them while they were following him. He would leave the house and be like, oh, by the way, guys, I'm just heading to Trader Joe's. I don't want you guys to lose me in traffic. It's wild. There are even several occasions where they are tailing him to a cafe or a restaurant. He'll then approach them in the car park and be like, hey, do you guys want to join me? And Adam, they do.
Oh, really? Oh, my.
Yeah. In fact, this becomes a bit of a strategy for the police because their thinking is that if we stay close to him, maybe he'll say something that gives us cause to arrest him or gives us a clue.
Or a free lunch.
Yeah, or a free lunch, yeah. But John does not see it that way at all. He is just so unbelievably arrogant that he thinks that they are all deeply interested in him as a person.
He is deluded, isn't he?
He is so deluded. He'll just go on and on about himself. He's like, wow, you guys are really good listeners. Let me tell you more about myself. And the police are like, please do go on.
Yeah. I guess it makes sense that the police are waiting for him to slip up, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's quite clever that they've built their trust and he is the way he is, right? And he does say some questionable things. He obviously loves talking about Bean Pogo the clown. And at one point, Adam, he says, you know, clowns can get away with murder, right? Which really does feel like a taunt, doesn't it?
Yeah. And do the police con on to that then? That seems like an odd thing to say.
Of course they do. Hence why it's in the story.
Yeah.
Here's the kicker. On the 9th of December, 1978, John arrives back home one morning. And of course, the police pull up because they've been trailing him. And just before he goes inside, he says, do you guys want to come in for breakfast? In the house that I've buried all the bodies in. And of course, the police are like, yes.
We've been waiting to get inside, actually.
While they're eating, one of the officers excuses himself to go to the bathroom and, of course, to have a bit of a snoop. While he's in there, Adam, the central heating kicks in.
Oh, no.
And within seconds, the smell from the crawl space starts circulating through the house. It is very awkward for John in that moment. Eventually, the cops leave. John is obviously panicking. And that same day, his lawyers file a $750,000 lawsuit against the police claiming they were harassing him and had done an illegal search on his property, the same property that he literally invited them into. His lawyers must be like, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah. And also just the nerve to think.
The nerve, yes!
He also must know his stupid heating is shit.
Yeah. It's a bit cold. This is December. It's going to kick in.
Yeah.
Crazy. So 3 days later, police finally get what they need to arrest him when they see him handing a bag of marijuana to a petrol station clerk. He's such an idiot. They can basically now use this to arrest him and search his house. And what is really sad, Adam, is that when the police enter that house, they still have hope that John is holding Robert prisoner. Remember, this is still just a few days after Robert went missing, so part of them thinks he's still alive. But I think very quickly it becomes clear that things are far worse than they ever imagined, because as soon as he is arrested, John immediately admits to killing one of the boys. They think he's going to say it's Robert, but the name that he says is just not a name that's on their radar, and it's John Buklovich. And he claims that it was self-defense, and he tells the cops specifically that he buried him in the garage. So we know that he's the only body that's in the garage. So in John's mind, he knows the jig is up. And so it's now about damage control. So his thinking is that he will tell them to search the garage. They'll find his body. Maybe they won't search the rest of the house. And then he'll only be charged with one murder. Maybe they'll stop digging, essentially. So it's a risky game, but it's the only card that he has to play at this point. But also, isn't that amazing? That he started confessing even before they've searched the house.
Yeah, and I guess they're not expecting him to say that he's killed someone at this point in time, or they might have a bit of a suspicion. But like you say, they're still expecting to find Robert alive.
Yeah.
They're not expecting to find 30 bodies under this house or whatever.
Yeah. So John takes the police to the spot in the garage where he buried John. But while the cops are searching the main house, One of the officers opens the trapdoor leading to the crawl space, and the moment he does, he is just overcome with a putrid smell. On that first day, they managed to recover the remains of 3 separate bodies. Without John saying anything to the cops, they know there are more bodies under there, and it's because the crawl space is a big space, right? There's plenty of room to spread out the bodies. But while they're digging one grave, they find the remains of another in an adjoining grave. So it's clear to them that there are so many bodies down there that he had to start packing them in. Grim, isn't it?
Yeah.
The next day, John confesses to killing 33 young men, most of them after he had sexually assaulted them. He says 27 of them were buried in the house, but in the end, the police actually find 29. So it's clear that he's lost count. The other 6 bodies, John says he dumped in the river, which explains why when he was called in for questioning after Robert went missing, he was covered in mud. It's because he was in the middle of disposing Robert's body.
Ah, so Robert's in the river, not under the house.
Yeah. The reason why he was so late was because his car slid off the road and had to be towed. John later claims that on the night that Robert disappeared, he drove him back to his house under the guise of offering him a job, which honestly I don't truly believe because we know that his mum was waiting for him in the car park. Plus, he said that he would only be 2 minutes, right? So I think that he took him against his will.
Mm-hmm.
But according to John's version, at the house, he tricked Robert into putting on the handcuffs before assaulting him and then murdering him. And what is striking about the confession as a whole is how everything is described in the third person. He keeps referring to the person who killed these boys as a guy called Jack.
So has he got some kind of psychosis then, or split personality?
Sounds like it, right? And now, John's a clever guy. This is also the 70s. How many times have we covered a story from the 70s where this was used as a defense? And so is it a bit of a trend?
Yeah.
Interesting. So following the confessions and finding all the remains, John is arrested. He is charged with 33 murders and he is put on trial on the 6th of February, 1980. The trial takes place over 5 weeks in Cook County, Illinois, overseen by Judge Lewis R. Repo. The defense's argument was that John was not guilty by reason of insanity, that he suffered from multiple personality disorder with 4 distinct personalities, namely the hardworking civic-minded contractor, the clown, the politician, and a policeman called Jack Hanley, who John refers to as Bad Jack and says is the personality responsible for all the murders. Which again is interesting. It's the 1970s. We've seen this so many times before, haven't we?
Does anyone buy that?
I don't think so. And we'll find out why. Because the defense really put all their effort into the strategy, painting him as this sort of kind of Jekyll and Hyde figure created out of kind of childhood trauma. They even bring his mother to testify about how abusive his upbringing was. So it is really clear that she stood by him throughout this, which must be an awful position to find yourself in, right? She must know that he did this.
Well, yeah, like by the end of it, surely she did. Like, she probably would have known throughout that that's what he was up to.
But it's so many boys. And even after he's eventually convicted, she continues to write to him on the regular. It's difficult, isn't it?
I don't know. How do you do that as a parent, knowing that your child's a serial killer? I don't know how you can separate yourself from that.
Yeah. On the other side, the prosecution's argument is the exact opposite. They said that not only was he sane, but he was also calculated and fully in control of his actions. And they say that the evidence for this was that none of the murders were random or chaotic in nature. There was a strategic, deliberate aspect to every single one of them, especially when you think about the degree of planning that is needed when you know that your wife and daughters are in the house, right? They argue the kind of maneuvering that this would have required a composed, organized mind in order to kind of get around that. Clever.
Yeah.
Further evidence for this was his MO, the handcuff routine, the way that he lured his victims in, the way he concealed the bodies in the crawl space using cement and lime. It was all the same. None of it was random, right?
Yeah. I haven't heard anything to say that he was like dressing up as a policeman, aside from the handcuffs. It feels like that's just been made up by his defense.
Yeah. Even though he murdered 33 people, there are some people who did escape. We don't know the full number, but prosecutors do manage to find at least 7 boys, 4 of whom end up testifying at trial. And that, as you can imagine, is hugely persuasive to the jury because these men were able to describe the exact pattern that he used, from the alcohol to the porn to the stupid fucking handcuff trick. At one point, in response, the defense tried to argue that the deaths were actually the result of accidental erotic asphyxiation.
That's horrendous.
It's just so absurd. Imagine having to stand there and say that as his lawyer with a straight face. Like, oops, strangled another one. No worries, I'll get the technique right on the next time.
Yeah, 30 more times or whatever. This is why I could never be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I could never do that for that reason. Defend someone like this, knowing that you're lying.
Sure, yeah. And it sounds absurd to us when I say that, but remember they were using the angle with the little trick that he was showing them with the turnbuckle thing.
Mm-hmm.
But still.
You just, you wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
And do you know what? We've said a few times that he killed 33 people.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I don't know, I don't think I really comprehended just how many that is. I know the number, but that is a lot of people that he has manipulated back into his house and killed in one way or another.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think it was just these 33 people that he had contact with. Remember, he was soliciting these boys for sex. They were coming and going. He was out like finding these boys. There could be hundreds of them, just 33 of them ended up dying. We don't know how many were assaulted because, of course, we know that there's that stigma attached to these young gay boys engaging in sex with this weird man.
Or even, they don't have to be gay, some of them, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, some of them were not gay. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, what an evil man.
At the end of the trial, it takes the jury less than 2 hours to come back with a verdict that he is guilty on all 33 counts of murder, along with sexual assault and taking indecent liberties with a child. What is wild is that at the time of his conviction, this is the highest number of murders anyone in American history has been convicted of, which is wild. Here's the interesting part. If he had been caught just a year earlier, he would have been sentenced to life in prison. But the state of Illinois had just reinstated the death penalty, and so this meant that he was going to be sentenced to death. I don't know how I feel about this, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts, but at his sentencing, Adam, there are a ton of anti-death penalty protesters there protesting against him being put to death.
Is that because they want him to suffer and they think that's an easy way out? Or are they just pro-life?
It's probably that. I understand being anti-death penalty in principle. I do. I think we're both anti-death penalty. But protesting at a John Wayne Gacy sentencing, a man who murdered very young men, minors, feels at least to be just really badly judged. Do you know what I mean? I think even the people that were there protesting, I don't think they'll be protesting very hard. I think they'll be like, yeah, no, don't kill him. Yeah.
Do you know what? I don't know if I do feel bad. He killed 33 people. That's not just, and I know he probably had a traumatic upbringing, but I feel it's deserved in a way, considering how many lives he took.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the kind of like the minor issue, like him assaulting minors and killing minors. That's the clincher for me. But also the 33 people, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, I was almost like, oh, they brought in the death penalty. In some ways, I don't feel bad about that for him.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. Like these people protesting, surely you must be like, okay, well, yeah, you can be anti-death penalty, but this is John Wayne Gacy. Do you know what I mean?
This is pretty extreme. This isn't just someone that's, an accidental killing or just one person. 33 people have died.
Of course, throughout the years, John, he appeals. He is never successful. When the appeals don't work, he starts changing his story. Sometimes he'll say he didn't kill anyone. Other times he says he only killed a few. He also claims the real killers were his employees that let themselves in his house with his keys and then were murdering boys without his knowledge.
What?
Yeah. And this is where some of the accomplice theories is born out of, from his testimony. Specifically David Cramp, but also a clown friend of his called Michael Rossi, who lived with him for about a year. Now, if he wasn't killing during that period, again, that only concentrates the rate at which he was killing when Michael wasn't around.
But he was killing whilst his wife was there. So, yeah, I don't think it doesn't stop him from doing it just because some boy moved in.
Sure. I don't really buy that any of these boys were an accomplice. I think he was doing this all on his own because it proved that he was able to do it under Carol. And wives are really nosy.
If anything, they're going to be nosier than these, teenage boys.
On death row, with nothing else to do, amazingly, John turns to painting, which is grim in itself. Most of his paintings are of Pogo the Clown, of him, they're self-portraits. And Adam, they end up selling for as much as $20,000.
That's why? Who's selling that?
Yeah. People who buy them said they did so because they didn't want them to become a shrine to kind of him in a way. So I get that.
Oh, so taking them off the mark almost.
Yeah, that's only a few people have said that, though, the reason why they bought it. But even still, that's a lot of money to be potentially going back to John Wayne Gacy himself. Like, for what? So that he can fund more legal appeals? Try and get off? So, I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me. Then, Adam, on the 10th of May, 1994, at 12:58 a.m., John Wayne Gacy is executed via lethal injection. Apparently, the chemicals that they used had degraded and they ended up clogging the IV tube. And so while everyone was watching, the families, the witnesses, members of the press, the execution team had to kind of stop, draw the curtains, and then get it sorted out, which is weird. It's a weird thought that people are watching.
Yeah, that's the bit I don't agree with the death penalty. I don't think it should be a spectacle.
Yeah.
Even if I knew someone that had killed someone, I don't think I'd want to watch.
Yeah, it's just so strange that even today we turn death into this kind of theatre with viewing galleries and curtains.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like the idea of going to watch someone die. It's like, hey, Adam, like there's a showing of Mamma Mia at the theatre tomorrow night. Do you want to go? And you're like, actually, there's an execution in the square. You want to go? And I'm like, only if they've got hot dogs. Do you know what I mean? It's just so weird.
It feels it just goes back to medieval times. That's what, we used to do back then. But have we not learned that that's not right?
Yeah, and I mean, there is a degree of it being for the families. They want to see him suffer. They want to see him die. So I get that from that angle. But there's press there. There's also, I don't know if there's members of the public there, but that's a bit strange.
Yeah, I feel like you're just playing into his history and his infamy by doing this.
Yeah. So eventually they get things sorted with the chemicals. Still, the chemicals themselves weren't great, to the point that it takes him 18 minutes to die. Which is what a lot of the protesters used to kind of say this is inhumane, right? Like the chemicals should have killed him way sooner. They normally would kill you in minutes, but because they had gone bad, it took him ages. Apparently, Adam, his last meal was KFC, which again is not great PR for KFC, is it?
It really isn't.
And his final words to the viewing gallery were, "Kiss my ass."
What a piece of shit.
What a piece of shit. But the thing to note is that right up to the very end, he never showed any remorse for what he did. And again, like we mentioned earlier, even at his execution, there were still protesters out there protesting against this, which is just weird. It's just so strange to me. He is such a prolific, evil murderer. I don't get it. As for the murder house, the authorities actually dealt with that pretty quickly after he was charged. Just 4 months, they got the entire thing demolished. But even as an empty lot, it became this major true crime tourist spot, which is just grim in itself. Eventually, though, a new house is built in its place. And the owners say that no matter how hard they tried, they cannot get grass to grow on the site.
Really?
Neighbors also say it's haunted, reportedly seeing ghostly figures running across the lot, hearing strange voices, apparitions that will appear and then disappear in a flash. And in 2010, paranormal investigators, they decide to go ahead and check it out. And they say that they made contact with John Wayne Gacy himself. So I don't believe any of that, but yeah, they say something to get grim. As for his victims, as I said, a lot of them have never been identified. I think there's still 5 victims that they've just never been able to. But as recently as 2021, genetic genealogy sites like 23andMe helped identify one of them as Francis Wayne Alexander.
And was he just like a missing boy then?
Yeah, he wasn't. I think he was 22 or so. He worked in local bars. He just divorced his wife. I don't know if he was gay, but he was clearly meeting up with him. He went and met up with him and yeah, he murdered him. And he was one of the last victims that were found or identified. And Adam, that is the story of John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown.
Well, yeah, not even really a killer clown.
No, not at all.
But I didn't know just how prolific he was.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's quite shocking, actually.
Yeah, and I'm surprised I've never heard of the story before because it seems to be like one of the big ones, right? Like the ones that broke the records, killing the most people. But God, I just didn't know that it wasn't really about a killer clown at all. And that actually the truth was more terrifying, that he was a real upstanding member of the community, well-respected, liked, and was able to operate in plain sight through maneuvering and manipulation and secrecy. It makes it more scary, in my opinion.
I think it does, yeah. This isn't someone that's lurking in the dark, putting on a mask. This is, I don't know. You think of the state of the world, you just think, God, who else is out there?
Yeah, crazy. Anyway, Adam, fancy doing some member shout-outs?
Yeah, let's do something. Let's end on a positive note.
Something a bit cheery.
So this is the part of the show where we remind you that the Compendium is not just a podcast. It is also, for reasons that remain legally and spiritually unclear, we're a literal functioning circus and a legally regulated place of work who is hiring.
We are hiring, Adam. Exactly. So make sure you guys head over to thecompendiumpodcast.com, click the jobs tab in the footer, where you can browse through all of our growing collection of bizarre and suspiciously specific, deeply bureaucratic circus jobs that we have on offer.
All of which sound fake and yet somehow feel more professionally organized than most companies we've ever worked for.
You can pick your favorite role, apply for it, and then tell us exactly what you do in your position day to day.
Yeah, but don't make it vague in a middle management sort of way. We want proper details. What are your duties? What incidents have you had to deal with? Who is underperforming in your team? What are your KPIs looking like? Is morale low? Has somebody been bitten by a ferret again?
And if you also include a photograph with your application, you'll be added straight to our team members page, where you'll officially become part of the Compendium family. Every week, we'll pick our favorite submission and read it out on the show, which means it's now time to shine that glorious spotlight on this week's star employee. This week's star employee is Natalia Devereaux Ward, who is our incident clerk glitter containment unit. The ideal person will respond to sparkle outbreaks with clipboard urgency, log accidents, establish quarantine zones, and coordinate decontamination of costumes, paperwork, and souls. Traces shimmer trails to their source and issues citations for unauthorized twinkle. Maintains the glitter register, levels 1.5, and refuses to touch anything still glittery.
I imagine her going, "Excuse me, who gave you permission to twinkle?
You have got no jurisdiction for that.
Come with me."
Get the shotgun. So Adam, tell us, how is Natalia performing?
Well, she says she logs any instance on her very organized spreadsheet. This helps her to track any patterns and prevent future sparkle outbreak incidents. She coordinates the decontamination of these incidents. This mostly includes the use of her Hetty Hoover and lint roller.
And a lint roller.
Yeah. This is detrimental to the smooth running of the circus. If even one performer is distracted by the glisten of an unwanted glitter, the entire show could be ruined.
Yeah, it's true.
It's happened more than once.
It has.
She also offers glitter counseling for anyone affected by any past incidents, as I know it can really have a long-lasting effect on a person's morale.
See, we put people first.
She then says that with her organized spreadsheet, she can very successfully track and prevent major glitter incidents, but it's always important to remember the great glitter incident of 1968. May Gertrude rest in peace.
Poor Gertrude.
And in terms of her self-assessment, she just says she thinks she's doing a cracking job.
I think so too. Minor violation. We don't use spreadsheets. It's the clipboard, babe. You need that clipboard.
Pen and paper.
Yeah, that was a good one. I had Lois contact me just the other day saying that she wants a role in the circus.
Lois, our cleaner.
Yeah, she wants a job as a cleaner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's fitting.
She was preparing to be the crotch dangler cleaner, but then she thought that sounded too much like she was a whore. And I was like, well, babe, it's not too far from the truth.
Harsh.
But true. And so her job is still pending.
Pending. We'll come back to that one.
Yeah, we'll have to circle back, find the right role. So guys, if you want to be featured on a future episode, head over to the Compendium Podcast, click jobs in the footer, and pick your role and send in your application. We will read the best ones on a future episode.
Shall we run the outro?
I think I'm ready. And that brings us to the end of another fascinating foray into the Compendium.
If today's episode has sparked your curiosity, then please do us a favor and follow us on your favorite podcast app. It truly makes a world of difference and helps more people discover the show.
For our dedicated freaks out there, don't forget that next week's episode is already waiting for you on our Patreon, and as always, it's completely free to access.
And of course, if you want even more, then you can join our Certified Freaks tier to unlock the entire archive. You get to delve into exclusive content and get a sneak peek at what's coming next.
We drop new episodes every Tuesday, and until then, remember, monsters rarely introduce themselves as monsters. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Thank you. If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.